Hey folks, you have a link to this document on the D2L course site. I just wanted to kind of walk through it a little bit because this is an important document when we talk about conducting a risk assessment. Remember we said that in the summary for Module 1 that one of the first steps that we have to do is to identify what the risks are in our communities and who the people are that they are happening to. And so this is going to help us kind of do that a little bit um, and in an organized fashion, which is always helpful. So this document was produced by Vision 2020, and if you want to go to their website, it's strategicfire.org, all one word, strategicfire.org. But you do have access to this, and we've looked at some of the other things on their site, but I just kind of to walk through it a little bit before, so you understand what's there. All right, so there we go. Here is our, in the table of contents, you can see that it looks similarly like the process that we've talked about, identifying the risks and then developing a community profile as far as the demographics, the partners, that sort of thing. We're not going to get into using GIS technology. What are some of the factors and the populations at greatest risk? And then target hazards. Some important definitions of those and some target hazard data. Step 3 is prioritizing the risks. And we're going to talk about that as far as vulnerability. We're going to talk about that as far as acceptable level of risk. And then there's an example there where we will put it all together. So I'm not going to go through the whole document, but I do just kind of want to walk you through some of these steps. Right here in this circle, this is what we're doing. We're identifying the risk. We're going to prioritize those, develop some strategies and tactics to mitigate, do our risk reduction plan, implement and modify. This is the community risk reduction process that we have already talked about. And so as we go through this course, those are the things that we are looking at. So it does talk a little bit about what risk reduction is and the importance of community risk reduction. So I wanted to give you this visual in case that helped you to understand what it is we are doing in this course. And again, it walks you through risks defined, some of the degrees of risk assessment, some useful tools that you might need. I'm going to scroll down there, identifying risks. And this is where we acquire data that identifies a risk. Um, we look at different types of incidents, police records, fire records, EMS calls. Where are they happening? If it was a fire, what are those causes? Are they fire related? Did people die? How seriously were people injured? The mechanism of injury and the causes of the illness. Um, who it's happening to, occupancy information. This is in a nursing care facility or a school, something like that. And so this is some of the data that we look at to collect some of this information about risk. So it walks you through that process as well and gives you some other perhaps information or sites where you can find more information about what is going on in your community. And then developing a community profile. This is what we're looking at: age, gender, income, race and ethnicity, education, housing type, those kinds of things, and some of the sources of data. You have a tutorial and will be preparing for us. You have the tutorial on the American Fact Finder website. It is also, it's a little bit down in the course site, but you're going to actually prepare a demographic um, overview of your community based on American Fact Finder. So there's some more information for some of that demographic data sources. The Census Bureau is great at that. Who are your community partners? Who in the community may be looking at these types of situations? Again, I'll use my example of child passenger safety, the pediatricians, the law enforcement, state patrol, and so those could be some of your partners. Are there trends? If we were going to look at the problem of DUI on the college campus or with our college students, summer's not going to be a great time to do that because there's not that many students here. So are there trends when it peaks or when it is lower? So then you're going to build your community profile. and this is going to help you do that. Don't get hung up in the GIS. We don't have access to that in this course, but it is a useful tool if you have that. Causal factors and populations at greatest risk. Who are these things happening to? Again, we're going to look at some of the things that makes that happen. Social factors, cultural influences, economic factors, environmental factors. These populations that are listed here, um, children age 5 and under, older adults age 65 and older, people with disabilities, living in poverty, and speak little or no English are our high risk audiences. Those are the people where we find in communities, no matter what the problem is, they are at a higher risk. So if you have those in your community, that may be your target population. Target hazards, again, identified there. Sorry, I slipped by that. Where there are critical facilities, maybe another name for it, where if there's an incident, um, there could be a large loss of life or it could have a devastating effect. Um, a lot of these places that are listed here may be low risk in that they have a lot of they have a lot of protective features, but it's going to be it's going to be a high density problem if something occurs there. So here's some definitions for you about hazards um, and again about values. And this is what's going to help us establish to be able to prioritize and establish our acceptable level of risk. Here in step 2, where that prioritization takes place, you can see some of the measures that they look at. In this particular example, we're going to look at it. You'll look at a video from another Gordon Graham. He's he's a very good speaker, but high risk. Um, um, is it likely? Is it possible? Is it unlikely? Is it rare? But also, what's the impact of it? We have to look at that. If it is unlikely, but yet it has a high or a major risk of consequence or impact, then we're going to do a little chart with that. So this is how we establish an acceptable level of risk. A lot of times that level has to be established by the community. Again, it goes back to what are they willing to pay for? What are they willing to, and I don't necessarily mean pay as in money, but what are they willing to trade out? Again, it's cost benefit. So this is, like I say, this is a document. This gives you an example here of a community risk assessment of Bolton, Washington. I would encourage you to look at that and see how they have developed their demographic profile, how they looked at, this is a map depicting some of the characteristics of their community, the social characteristics, the economic characteristics, housing, um, then the fire department resources and service areas. We're not really worried about with that right now. But then we look at some of their incidents and they're going to break that down for us. I certainly am not looking for anything in this grade of detail, so don't let that freak you out. But this just gives you an example of the type of information that we are looking at. Again, GIS, don't worry about it. Use that as an example to try to target um, your high risk incidents. And again, it's not going to be that complicated for us, but I wanted to walk through this risk assessment guide because it is a good example. It is a little in depth more so than what we would want, but this is where we're going to get to. Here on this page, I was looking for a page number. Um, Priority number 1 is cooking fires. This is where they have established their priority. And as you read through the document, you should be able to see why they established this. Ground level falls. That means that grandma is falling down. And that is a true statement. Um, and then wildland type fires in residential areas in the wildland urban interface. So these are their priorities, how they have prioritized these results. So I would encourage you to look at this document. Like I say, there's some references there for you. You've got access to that, the document through the course site. And I was going to see if I could pull that up for you here. Um, it's here on the course site. There is the document, just like I just showed you. You can download it if you would like to. The next thing that you will see is the tutorial on the American Fact Finder. That is another narrated video, or it shows it's not so much a video, but it just walks you through the process of finding your community in the American Fact Finder. For those that live in Swainsboro, I did it. That's what I did, and so that kind of helps you out a little bit. And this is the link to the American Fact Finder where you will be able to enter that information yourself. If you have any questions about this, this is a great tool. This is a great guide as we strive to conduct our community risk assessment and then identify those hazards, define that acceptable level of risk as we go through here to try to prioritize. We can't work on every risk that's present, and that's why we prioritize them based on the high impact and the likelihood of its occurrence. If you have any questions, be sure and let me know.